So, hey Chuy,
Hey, Thor, how are you?
I'm doing great. So, for all the attendees, we are starting a minute or two, and then we will start. Everybody's able to hear us and see us. And I'm seeing Chetna is answering.
You want to
Great.
go ahead and display?
Sure. Can you take a look on the chat, Chuy? And I'm gonna ask the audience if they can see my screen.
I see your screen now, Thor.
Great.
So let's get started. Very excited to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Why we're here? There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of information about artificial intelligence and agentic AI. And why we're here is to really define and share with you what agentic AI is and what is not. So let me quickly go through the agenda. So during today, we're expecting to interact with you as much as we can. So as we go along in the presentation, we will start asking questions to all of you. So be ready. We want to know where are you in your journey. We want to understand more from you and from the audience. So it's not only about what we're going to share with you today, but it's also what you're going to be able to see about what others are doing. I'm Chuy Michel. I've been with Chasey Partners for the last 5 years, talking to many of you, presenting to some of you. And I'm glad and happy to have Thorsten with me today. Thorsten, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Chuy. Torsten Schultz over here. I've been on the intelligent automation world for about 8 years so far. Initially, I started with in RPA as many others in the industry. Recently, in the past couple of years, moving towards to artificial intelligence. I do lead a global team of developers and consultants doing intelligent automation projects. So I have vast experience in the field. At Chasey, when Chu is gonna do the agenda, introduce Chasey, but something that we are very, very proud of Chasey is that we are all practitioners. So we have actually field experience. We can show you the scars. Part of this webinar, as Chu just mentioned, is we are gonna provide the context with a shared service center perspective. That's part of the idea, and we are gonna do some real world
There's,
use cases.
I think there's a few people, Thors, that they are not able to hear us. I see Elena and Beth, Somea and Pearson advising that audio is not good on their end. So I think it's okay. So it's a mix of people hearing us and not. Okay. So for those that you can't hear us, you can fix it yourself through the settings options in audio. So we'll just keep moving. As you mentioned, Torsten, or a quick introduction, we're going to start defining, as I mentioned, very important, what are the difference between RPA, traditional artificial intelligence, and agentic AI. So if we move quickly through Chasey, almost 20 years, founded almost 20 years ago, very focused on assisting organizations to evolve and transform operating models. Also, as Thorsten mentioned, practitioners in GBS, in shared services, um, not only in North America, but now expanded all over the world, expecting and experiencing huge growth in some of our business lines in Latin America as well. Three lines of business: business transformation, as I mentioned, helping GBS organizations or shared service organizations to evolve their operating model and move to the next level in terms of maturity. Based on the experience built in operating models in shared services, we created the digital transformation unit, looking for very point solutions for processes like procure to pay, order to cash, hard to retire, RT, not only from an automation point of view, but as we've been evolving, as the market evolves, now very focused on providing solutions, point solutions for artificial intelligence use cases. We're going to touch on use cases in a little bit. And a new offering, which is Flex BPO, recently launched and with a couple of success cases, delivering value and savings across the board for organizations that have decided either completely or partially to move in a hybrid model, combining captive shared services with some BPO elements as well. If you go to the next chart, over 3,000 employees around the world, as I mentioned, mainly serving the European market through our India delivery centers, and within the Americas, providing services across the board from Canada through Argentina, with delivery centers both in Mexico and Colombia as well.
So here is where we are having our first poll question. So everybody who can pull their cell phones, you're gonna see a QR code, and from this QR code, you're gonna have 4 or 5 options to answer. The whole idea is to create this interaction and be able to understand where you are. So that was quite fast. We got our first answer so far. So please, guys, read the QR code, and in 10 seconds or so, you're going to see all the different answers. The question over here is, how familiar are you with the concept of agentic AI? We're getting some answers. So far, the majority is answering that agentic AI is completely new or have heard of it. We are taking an extra 20 seconds or so, and then we jump into conclusions.
And I think, just as the audience keeps answering, Thorsten, this is typical, right? We've seen that we're hearing a lot about agentic AI. Some of the organizations we work with are in the early stages of trying to find the right use cases. But a lot of people is hearing about it, and it seems the interest keeps growing. Of course, organizations that they haven't started yet, they're still in the early stages of identifying things that can be addressed by using artificial intelligence. So I think that we can move to the next chart, Thors. So I'm not the expert here, right? But I keep hearing, what is the difference between RPA, between artificial intelligence, between advanced analytics, between the old AI to the new agentic AI. So Thorsten, why don't you start just providing some perspectives on the differences?
Thank you, Chuy. So what's agentic AI? The concept itself is quite new. It has been existing in the market for around 10 years or something like that. However, in the past 3 years, and probably after ChatGPT became so popular with this artificial intelligence, generative AI, it has been becoming more accessible. And that's why there is right now a huge hype in terms of agentic AI. Everybody is promoting it. Everybody says it's using it. However, every time that I do have conversations with several leaders in the industry, the answer is yes, we are starting to investing on it. We are understanding what it is, what capabilities they are. we are doing best case scenario. Some people are doing some pilots. There is a huge hype, but in terms of how fast companies are adopting it, it's not as fast as it appears, because in every major event, major technology provider is showcasing the agentic AI, their Gen AI capabilities, but the reality is it takes a little bit longer actually to start seeing the results that are being promoted. So basically, what's agentic AI? Agentic AI is generative AI, generative artificial intelligence with other kind of connectors, and in general, it's a technology that can take decisions autonomously, and that can not only answer some queries, can actually do processes, can do whatever people are doing on a daily basis. It's a technology that has been designed to take decisions and to move forward and do processes as any other analyst is doing. These agents
Those,
are,
would
go
you
ahead.
say that would you say that if you put in a blender a chatbot, an RPA, or any even low code automation, and ChatGPT or tools like ChatGPT, if you put all these three things together, you get agentic AI, or what do you get?
I think if you ask that to someone who has been working in MIT, creating part of the technology and doing everything that we know right now, he's going to say no. But in general terms, yes. So in overall, yes, it's a chatbot. It has some chatbot technologies, Gen AI technologies, and RPA was meant to do actual stuff. So in that term, yes, it's accomplished that. And the whole idea, and something where a lot of companies has been facing in the past, RPA has been more than the ultimate solution, a solution for a specific problem with specific, let's say, legacy systems, applications, and so with Gen AI and with the new technologies, we're going to be able to do more connectors, and everything is flowing through the back end, which is great. Which, in other terms, yes, if you put some RPA, a chatbot, and artificial intelligence in a blender, yes, you're going to get an agentic AI. The only thing that I would add is, let's take into account that this can take decisions by its own, by the way it has been programmed. And that's the beauty of agentic AI. And most of the agentic AIs right now, and why it's so trending, it's because generative AI is very trendy right now. And we do not want only a chatbot that is providing us answers, that is helping us by drafting some emails. Right now, we want proper work for the technology. We want to make sure that the technology is producing, it's doing something for us instead of being just a chatbot with AI. Did I answer your question, Shui?
Yeah, thanks, Tors. Let's keep moving.
So and probably this is going to help a little bit to answer that. Here is a quick chart that defines the difference between RPA, traditional AI, and agentic AI. So with RPA, most of the time, and everybody who has been doing this for the past almost 20 years knows that in order to do an RPA, you have to have rule-based executions. It's a reactive behavior. You have to train everything that is out of scope. Probably what you end up doing is you train an RPA in order to do something, but everything that is not trained, it's an unknown exception. It doesn't pursue a goal. It doesn't do actually reasoning. It's just the things that you program the RPA to do. With traditional AI, and traditional AI is a vast of technologies. You can do a lot of things, but for rules-based execution, sometimes you can use traditional AI, some LLM models. Um, yes, it's a reactive behavior. Your autonomous goal most of the time is limited, mostly because of the cost that this involve. It takes a lot to actually invest in traditional AI. The reasoning, yes, it happens. It's limited to the data that you are using for training your models, and the human-like collaboration most of the time is not as fluent because those are, let's say, more. I don't want to say more advanced technologies, but at some point, yes. With agentic AI, we are using generative AI, so we are training the models. And we don't have tons of data as in other models, because this is a large language model that has been already trained on our language, on data that exists, and taking into account all that training or pre-exist training that actually this technology can produce. Let's say that we want to do an agentic AI for solving inquiries from HR and do some processes within your HR management system. Yes, you can do it. The data that you're going to need, it's going to be way lower. The only thing that you have to train is what to expect and how to act. And this technology, the beauty of this technology is can be self-trained at some point. The more that interacts with the user, the more it will learn. You can actually train the data with train the model with real data coming from analysts. So the more an analyst is doing their task, the more it trains and the more understand how these tasks should be addressed, should be tackled. And this is quite the beauty. So I think I already explained a little bit of the difference between RPA, traditional AI, and agentic AI. Chui, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I was just gonna mention that Martin is asking if we're gonna show a demo. Today we're gonna show you a use case. We do have a demo available, Martin, so we would be happy to follow up with you and show you an actual demo of the solutions we have deployed. But why don't we move to use cases and we start some sort of defining boundaries of agentic AI. And I think this chart is very important towards the relevance to shared services. Sorry, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, sure. And Chui, we were discussing. I think in the last event we were together, that why shared service centers. So why do we choose shared service centers to use RPA, to use um, artificial intelligence, to deploy agents? The answer is simple. It's one of the few places in a corporation, in an organization, where processes, people, and technology live together. There is some good level of understanding of the processes. There is a good level of expertise. There is a good level of standardization most of the time. Um, Anything else you want to add, Shui?
Yeah, I think that from a business perspective, agentic AI, just like in the past RPA, right? So think about it just from an evolution perspective. 15 years ago or so, we started talking about RPA and automation. Now, most of the shared service centers and GBSs are in later stages of maturity from an automation standpoint. And agentic AI, it's in terms of evolution what RPA used to be 10 years ago. So uh, there's new use cases for shared services. I think that if you look at the key components of how a shared service center operates, it's all about providing exceptional services to the internal business units across the company. And using agentic AI is helping GBS and shared services to provide real-time information to inquiries, being able to troubleshoot process inefficiencies, being able to project demands, and being able to quickly respond to O2C, P2P, hard to retire inquiries across the board, not only from an internal perspective, but also as shared services moves more towards the front end of the company, being able to interact in the O2C space with clients for client inquiries.
So over here we have our next question. Which area of or function of a shared services do you believe is the most in need of intelligent automation today? By intelligent automation, we are including, of course, agentic over there. Okay, the first answer we got is help desk. And Just to provide a little bit of context, where we are seeing in the industry and over the past couple of years, where is kind of your first agentic, it's something related to self-service and self-service for any of these areas, it will work. Because again, Chuy was mentioning the Blender, getting RPA, a chatbot, and so because this technology has a lot of interactions and can put the human in the loop, it makes a lot of sense to do some self-services purposes for deploying agents. And I'm assuming that most of the people over here in this webinar comes from probably finance and accounting. Yes, for finance and accounting as well, there are some good examples and good use cases of some financial reporting, some um, data projects that you can use agentic AI. A lot of times, the only thing that we have to make sure is to find the right use case for the right technology. We have been seeing a lot that agents are being used to do some bank recs, for example, but the technology that you're using for bank recs should not be agents, and a machine learning model is going to be more effective to that. It's as well artificial intelligence, but one of the things that are very useful is to find the right use case for the right technology. That's why most of the time we always recommend to start not with a proper, let's say, pilot or a project. The project should start doing some review of the processes before choosing the one, because we want to get a really good use case and make sure the use case is suitable and is best suitable for the technology we are proposing.
Tors, do you think that if you fast forward agentic AI, let's say 3 years from now, it's agentic AI gonna evolve in a way that is gonna replace RPA, or in your perspective, 3 5 years from now, agentic AI and RPA will still be combined and will live in the same ecosystem?
Yeah, in 3 to 5 years, and I'm gonna say the next 10 years, it's gonna be combined. So RPA has been in the market for way longer. Their purposes are, and the objective of doing an RPA and agentic, not necessarily it's gonna cover that. An agentic, it's something that complements, and you're gonna be able to do more with an agentic AI. And we at Chasey, we have been doing RPA for years so far. And when we start launching our first agentic pilots, it was very, very common to complement that with RPA. So again, we have our chatbot, our Gen AI model, agentic AI model, and sometimes, let's say, an agentic AI should perform. I need to block an account for a major telephone company that this number is being blocked, and they are using an old legacy system. And in that old legacy system, due to regulations, you cannot create an interface using your agentic AI. So you end up connecting an agentic AI with an RPA, and the RPA is performing the task, and later on the agentic AI is confirming that the task has been completed. So those are technologies that are really good to mix and match, and a lot of things that agentic AI cannot answer, it's going to be solved through RPA, and a lot of things that RPA is not best suited for, it's going to solve with agentic AI, and those two technologies work great combining those.
So basically, what you're saying, Tors, it's don't rush, don't try to solve each and everything with agentic AI, but rather find the right use case. Don't confuse it with RPA, which is transactional repetitive automation. Try to figure out a way to identify what client problem, what supplier problem you're trying to address, and that's how you pick the agentic AI use case. I remember, Thorsten, that when we launched the intelligent automation programs uh, 5 7 years ago, we used to have some form of assessment to identify the best use cases for automation. We know all of them, right? The invoicing, bank reconciliations, and so forth. What is the mechanism or the approach, best approach to identify use cases for agentic AI?
It's not that different, Chuy. Because let's say that the first thing is to understand processes and validate what are your pain points and how to suit an agentic AI in order to tackle those pain points. So most of the time you do enter in your most manual and repetitive areas because you want to make sure that at some point a business case gets created. Something that we always recommend is make sure you have a strong business case. There are several companies in the world investing in artificial intelligence just because the CEO said, okay, artificial intelligence is here. There is a $10 million budget for investing in AI. And a lot of times those projects get um, failed after the consultants went off. And why? Because a lot of times searching for super big investments means that data should be cleaner, you should have a proper data pipeline, the system should be up to date, and sometimes in real experience that do not happen. Um, so a lot of times it is much better to understand processes, to do a process suitability assessment, process discovery assessment, understand not only manual and repetitive, that was what you were looking for when doing RPA. Right now you are looking, yes, manual processes, not only repetitive, because you're going to be able to have a lot of different deviations using an agentic. The most important thing is the data exists in order to train those. But the whole idea is, yes, start with an assessment, then think into a pilot, and probably after the pilot, you're going to be able to actually build a strong business case, not only for one to hundreds of agents within your company.
There's one
And
question.
we
There's
broke,
one question.
go
There's
ahead.
one question from Kartik. Thank you, Kartik, for your question. Thorsten, can you provide the difference between agentic AI and AI agents, or is the same?
Um, it depends, like concepts, and those concepts right now are at some point very new to the market. Agentic AI, it's defined as a technology that can take autonomous decisions, and the technology, or yeah, the technology behind that technology, sorry for the confusion, can be several, let's say, AI families with and the other is an, it's not agentic AI agent. What's the other concept, Chewy? Because I'm not able to see the
Agentic,
chat.
agentic AI and AI agents.
AI agents mostly are becoming in the industry as proper co-pilots. Most of the time, that technology is being defined using generative AI, and that's what it's rising right now in the market. But basically, it's almost the same thing. It depends on the company how those are positioned. And over here, we broke two different use cases. One is self-service agentic AI for vendors and clients. And Chewy, I want you actually to start because I remember a couple of years ago, this was our first proper deployment for one of our clients. You wanna take it?
Which one, Thorsten?
The P2P agent.
Yeah, resolving inquiries from providers, right? It's
Yeah.
some sort of constantly in the P2P space. There's a lot of distraction happening with suppliers contacting each and every time internal clients, contacting the procurement team with basic inquiries about POs, basic inquiries about payments. There's a lot of information already in the portals, but it was not user friendly. It wouldn't interact with the backend of the SAP or Oracle systems. And with the deployment of agentic AI and combining, and remind me here, Thorsten, when you first deployed it, did we combine RPA with the Agentic AI, or how did it work technically?
Yes. Yes, at that time, I remember that we were interacting with SAP as the main ERP with two other systems. Um, One of those systems was a vendor self-service portal. Everything was not connected, and in order to do those connections, I remember the portal was quite old, and it did not have any APIs or interfaces that can be built. So we end up using RPA, and that was our first project with regarding agentic AIs. We end up creating a chatbot that at that time that chatbot was having two channels, and it was not to vendors and client, it was only to vendors at that time for a procure to pay team. Um, People, and that was built for Latin American, and in Latin America the main, let's say, channel to contact even companies is through WhatsApp, which is an application. And we were able to connect WhatsApp. At that time, WhatsApp was not having even an API call. Microsoft Teams for self-service internally for not only your vendors, your, let's say, procurement. And it was able to answer like 20 different questions and 10 different actions. Things like, I want to understand when we are going to get paid, when this invoice is going to be paid, your traditional inquiries from your procure to pay cycle. It can be also things like, I want to create a payment block for a particular vendor to do this or this reason. So the agent was using an RPA in order to log in into the system, create the proper uh, blockage for that particular client, log out, confirm that it has been done at that time. And we have been evolving. At some point, I remember that client switched to a new portal because the old one was not needed anymore. Most of the people were using uh, their WhatsApp, their Teams, or even their portal in order to chat and do all the inquiries. Um, and at some point, they transitioned, and we were able to stop using the RPA and using only APIs and interfaces. I remember, and we evolved later on to order to cash to do almost the same thing with clients, and to do almost the same thing with the internal commercial team. Things as, for example, I wanna release a sales order that is blocked in Oracle. It was doing that in the system. So almost every action um, that came and that was manual, that was repetitive, that years ago probably that was an RPA, and agentic AI was able to take those. And the beauty about the agentic was that um, the technology were allowed people to ask the stuff instead of creating a ticket. Most of the time with RPAs, people were used to go to ServiceNow, create a ticket, make sure that everything is perfect, otherwise the RPA will fail. With agentic, you're having a conversation, and within that conversation, it 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 is much easier to let the technology know what you're looking for, and more fast and faster as well.
So would you say, Torsten, that if we're thinking about use cases, right, and let's think about GBS or shared service center, would you say that P2P or O2C are the right places to start? How would you compare that with human resources like agentic AIs? What's some sort of the difference between starting in the P2P, O2C, or the hard to retire processes?
Um, that's that's a really good question. I think um, yeah, plenty of differences is that processes can vary and can be more standardized in one way or the other, Chewy, and that may impact the proper use case. Um, the other thing is what you're looking for in each of the areas. Some areas are more prone to get some um, level of efficiencies in terms of hours saved. Some other areas are looking for getting deeper analysis and get some other use cases. And I think I answered your question. You were breaking up at the very beginning, but I think that's my network right now. Were you able
I
to
can
hear my
hear you.
answer?
I was able to hear your answer.
Okay, good.
And
So
what are you experiencing? Would are shared service centers looking more for P2P, O2C, or both?
again, Chuy, you're breaking up. Sorry.
Okay, keep going.
Sure. Um, so in the in order to finalize these use cases, the general things about vendors and clients, that's P2P and order to cash most of the time. You get a 24/7 agentic that is able to answer all of the inquiries or most of the inquiries. Most of the time, getting into that 75% of all frequent inquiries answered autonomously. It's something doable. It's most of the time it has been already identified, and it's just training a model to answer those. And we can increase always at least 25% of the vendors and client satisfaction, because most of the time that was either a call or an email or a ticket that in order to be answered it can take hours or days, and right now you can get immediate answers. In terms of the impact, it decreases interventions, manual work goes way less, and we actually can have analysts to do analysis instead of to do operational stuff. And that's kind of the whole idea.
Can you hear me now well, Torso, or not yet?
Yes, much better. Much better, Tree.
Okay, better.
And the second use case that we broke, and this is very interesting, and it's one of the ones that we just embarked recently, is the SOP execution for customer services, for custom services teams. And this can work for several other teams. So most of the time, SOP is standard operating procedure. It's something that has been either well defined, well documented, and at some point, most of our processes are following some level of rules and structures. One thing about SOPs, it can be well documented, but there are several, let's say, actions to be taken. We can use SOPs in order to train agents. We can make sure that an agent can interpret the context, can navigate the different instructions, and after providing the necessary training, we can train the agent to do stuff within our system. So we are not and that happens a lot with RPA technologies. Most of the time, an RPA was built for a particular process or processor activity. With agents, you can just fill an agent with SOPs, documentation and information. And the next step is going to be train the agent what to do within the systems in order to do that execution. Sometimes it can be fully autonomously. Sometimes there is a human in the loop where the agent gets gets a different tickets, requests, and so and is providing all the necessary information to a human, an analyst in the loop, validating that everything that is doing is correct. After, let's say, it creates a level of confidence, it can autonomously proceed every, let's say, assignment that it has from the same stuff. And that's kind of the beauty when we say autonomously over here. Again, most of the time this works as an agent, so it can answer inquiries 24/7. The different inquiries are being proceed. And for this one, for the one in SOPs, what we found is, because you are providing a lot of data and there are a lot of actions, most of the time, initially, the model has to be trained and has to have some human that is validating the model and is validating the executions. But after it creates, let's say, 90 or 95 percent of certainty of after several attempts, it's going to start working by itself, and it's going to let the human in the loop know. And at some point, we're going to have a fully trained agent that is going to be able to answer up to 75% of those inquiries.
Tors, in terms of timelines, in terms of effort, I remember that it was pretty easy to define how much time it would take to create an RPA bot, right? It's your low complexity, your medium complexity, high complexity, anywhere between, let's say, 5 weeks through probably the most complex one, 16 weeks. In terms of agentic AI, how would you compare the effort and the timeline for a project, let's say, to support supplier inquiries?
It's a little bit longer because the scope itself is it can be way bigger. But in general, let's say with RPA, we were having 4, 8, and 12 to 16 weeks. Over
Uh-huh.
here, you can deploy an agent in 2 weeks, a basic one. After, if you want that agent to perform with several systems, that takes a little bit longer. But we are moving your low complexity of 4 weeks, sometimes to around 6 to 8. However, you high complexities, and this is a multi-month engagement, the SOP executions, because there is a bunch of data, and that's gonna take like 9 months to get deployed. But most of the agents are being deployed in less than 4 months
Now,
for
follow
shared service center purposes.
now a follow-up question. Thanks, Torsten. So what you're basically saying, for high complexity agentic AI, it's gonna be more time than a high complexity automation. Um, and in that regards, how would you describe the technology in itself, right? Remember, in the old days, RPA became very popular in GBS and shared service centers, not only due to the fact that no advanced programming expertise was needed. So you would not need to be an engineer in any given programming language, but rather it was important that you were trained in low code, which is more intuitive, object oriented type of programming. How would you describe agentic AI? Do you need always data scientists involved in a project? Do you need, Java.NET developers involved in the project? Or can you use some sort of a similar approach to what we used to do with RPA?
So most of the companies are doing a similar approach. However, more than the approach itself, yes, you have to have some developer experience in order to do that. General the development is just fine to start an agentic AI journey. One thing that agentic and RPA are very different in is most of the time you were able to launch, proceed, and do almost everything within an RPA project with minimal involvement of IT. Over here, it's way different because most of the time you're going to be touching different systems and not mimicking the way that a human was doing that with a proper user and password. You're going to need some permissions, access to APIs, access to interfaces. You have to do a full testing cycle. Most of the time that testing cycle takes place in the testing environments with RPA most of the time, and sometimes those gets bypassed, and we're acting as a human just by having an analyst that was validating everything that the RPA was doing. So in general terms, the level of complexity, technical complexity, has increased a little bit, yes. However, the level of partnership that you should have with your IT department is right now mandatory, because you are touching other systems, and you have to have the at least the same level of expertise that someone in IT, just to explain what an agent is doing and what you're looking for. For example, if you are interacting with SAP and you want to search for some data, you should have some knowledge about different tables that exist in SAP in order to explain what you're looking for. Because IT has the technical resources most of the time in order to provide you access or let you know where you can get some data. But you should be able to have those conversations with them.
Okay, so IT involvement is critical for success. That's basically what you're saying in Agentic AI.
Yes.
Thank you, Tors.
And this is, I think, our last question in the pool. And then we can start jumping into conclusions. Where do you see agentic AI delivering the greatest impact? By reducing manual interventions, enhancing decision making, improving customer vendor satisfaction, increasing SLAs. So the first answer was all of the above, and that's quite true. Reducing manual interventions, yes. Improving customer vendor satisfaction, that's most of the time really easy using agentic AI. However, let's remember that one of the purpose of agentic AI is it can take decisions, it can do processes. So enhancing the decision-making process of agents is one of the things that must happen. And this is where for a lot of leaders in the industry, it's not natural that agents or AI are taking decisions by itself. However, we should get into a point where um, everybody has experienced that an analyst makes a mistake, and that was totally fine. When RPA were doing mistakes, some RPA projects were actually stopped for a mistake, because when we talk about technology, we do not let technology do mistakes most of the time. With agents, that's something that it can happen. It's something that should be trained, and the more we train an agent, the more it gets their mistakes and learn from its mistakes. It's going to be much better, and at some point, the more we allow that, the better agent we are going to have. And I'm seeing that almost everybody answered all of the above. So this actually summarizes most of what we have been saying during the session. Start small, scale smart, choose the right use case for the right technology. If we are talking about agents, choose a use case that an agent can solve. Do not do something that can be addressed via RPA and use an agent, because it's not going to be cost efficient. RPA can do it just fine. Probably the deployment can be even faster. And define your agent goals. Most of the time, um, we are improving SLAs, we are improving customer client satisfaction. There are several goals that can be achieved, but are not as easy to measure as others. So define your goals, make sure that you accomplish those ones, and be realistic in what you're looking for. Interoperability is one of the key things. So partner with IT, make sure that you can do integrations. Otherwise, yes, you can have agents connected to systems via RPA. That's not the smartest decision, because answers and the level, one thing that you get from agents is everything is super quick. If you end up using an RPA, your answer or your processing time, it can increase by a lot. um, Govern your AI initiative. Most of the time, define proper governance model, define some roles, um, define responsibles in general, and make sure that you are not only creating a governance program for just a project. Create a governance program for AI, making sure that IT is also included over there, and do it not for just one agent or one project. Do it for hundreds of those, because as soon as you do the first one, in our experience, the scale that you can have is way bigger than almost every other technology that has ever existed. Not as popular as your classic Excel Visual Basic macros, but in agents you can scale very, very fast. And upskill and communicate. Make sure that you're training the staff after an agent is deployed. The process of training, of making sure that everything runs properly, it's something that can be done by the business. You don't need technical uh, skills to do that. Make sure that whomever you're partnering with, it provides some level of training and knowledge transfer for every project you are building. That's the only way of making sure that this, after consultants are gone, the program and the project keeps working as it was designed to. And okay, we got the last one, sorry. However, we want to understand how ready is your organization to adopt agentic AI. What are your thoughts? Your leadership is buying the idea. It's far, far away because a lot of people are not aware so far of it. And where you are, I've been having several conversations that a lot of people are either exploring or implementing or piloting some ideas. The answer that we got is exploring use cases, no concrete plans yet. We will give a couple of extra minutes, 1 extra minute or so, not considering it currently. Um, and I think moving forward to Q&A. Sure, because I do not have access to the chat. In case there is any question, just let me know.
Sure, will do. I may have a question for you. Final question, I promise. And Thorsten, I asked you a while ago about the efforts and complexities associated with the project. Now, how it relates to pricing. Do you feel like an agentic AI over time is going to get to a point that will compare to what an RPA bot costs, or you still see in the next few years that the cost of deploying agentic AI is still slightly more expensive than deploying an RPA bot?
Okay, so and deploying agents in general, I remember like 2 years ago were like 2 or 3 times more expensive what it is right now, and it has passed only 2 3 years. So in general, it's gonna be similar. I think the effort associated to agents is a little bit more, and because it's more effort, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive. But in terms of what you are paying and the value you are getting for AI agents, it's it's way bigger. It's way bigger, and the prices won't be that different at some point. Because as I mentioned you, the technical expertise in order to do an agentic AI is not huge. Someone with RPA experience can build, design, and deploy AI agents most of the time. My
And we have a question from the audience, Doors, which is
okay.
along the same topics and context that we've been discussing. How much time from beginning to end will take an entire project to be deployed, and that includes the training for the agentic? Like, what's the range
I
of
think
weeks?
I think 12 to 16 weeks
12 to
is
16.
more than enough to do something similar of what we have been discussing. Agents to your procure to pay, HR, order to cash function. Of course, if we want to increase the functions, increase the scope, it can be act as separate projects. However, after launching the first one, and this is the beauty, and this is one of the things about AI agents, agentic AI. After you launch the first one, you're going to have approved technology, and the only thing that you would require in order to have more is going to be training of a separate model, and that's going to be way faster. That's going to be something that it can happen instead of 12 to 16 weeks. It can happen in just 4.
Awesome. Thanks, Torsten. And I think we're right on
And
time. Any final
yes,
comments, Torsten, before we go?
probably an advice is make sure you're identifying right use cases. We have been approaching to companies, to some of our clients. They start the journey doing an agentic AI for something that was not uh, meant to be done by AI agents. Um, and the whole idea is make sure that you're selecting your right technology for your right use cases. So start by identifying good use cases. After you get your use cases, everybody has use cases. Every area will have use cases for these types of technology. Just select the right ones, and you're going to have a strong business case and a very good journey in terms of artificial intelligence. Right now, the accessibility that we do have to these technologies is something that 5 years ago we were not thinking about having it. So enjoy your journey. Thank you
And
all. It has been a pleasure. And thanks, Chui. Any final
thank you,
final thoughts?
Torsten. Thank you, Torsten. Thanks to the audience. Looking forward to the next event. And you know how to contact us if you need us. See you soon.
Bye bye.